Billions of people around the world were shocked. What happened to Amelia? What happened to our heroine? Ever since then, that mystery has haunted people.
For nearly 9 decades, the disappearance of Amelia Earhart has remained one of aviation's greatest unsolved mysteries.
We have found things on the island that we can't explain unless they came from Earhart's airplane.
In 1937, the pioneering female pilot and her navigator, Fred Noonan, vanished somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, sparking countless theories and expeditions. In 2025, after years of technological advancement and tireless searching, researchers believe they finally uncovered the truth.
The airplane is on land and able to run an engine to recharge the battery, so it's on its wheels. She's made a safe landing someplace.
About what happened to Earhart's Lockheed Electra aircraft. This is the story of how modern technology, innovative thinking, and dedicated explorers may have finally solved the puzzle that captivated generations.
Called Nicomaroro.
We think Amelia Earhart landed and died as a castaway on this island, on Nicomaroro.
To understand why Earhart's disappearance became such an enduring mystery, we need to appreciate who she was and what she represented in her time. Born in Kansas in 1897, Amelia Earhart wasn't just a pilot. She was a symbol of courage and determination in an era when women were still fighting for equal recognition. Her fascination with aviation began after attending an air show in 1920. By 1923, she had earned her pilot's license, becoming only the 16th woman in the United States to do so. Her breakthrough came in 1928 when she became the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean as a passenger. While significant, that achievement didn't satisfy her ambition. In 1932, she made history again by becoming the first woman and only the second person after Charles Lindbergh to fly solo across the Atlantic. The 15-hour journey from Harbour Grace, Newfoundland, to Culmore, Northern Ireland earned her international fame and recognition. But Earhart wasn't content to rest on her accomplishments. She continued to break records. She was the first person to fly solo from Hawaii to California, from Los Angeles to Mexico City, and non-stop from Mexico City to Newark. Her bold personality and distinctive style, leather jacket, short cropped hair, and confident smile made her instantly recognizable. Beyond flying, she championed women's rights, designed her own clothing line, and wrote for Cosmopolitan magazine about women entering male-dominated fields. By 1937, Earhart was 39 years old and planning her most ambitious journey yet. Circumnavigating the globe along the equator, a 29,000-mile route never attempted before. This wasn't just about setting another record. It was about proving that women could achieve feats equal to men in skill, courage, and endurance. As she famously said, "Women must try to do things as men have tried. When they fail, their failure must be but a challenge to others." The details of Earhart's final flight remained unclear for decades. In June 1937, she and Fred Noonan departed from Miami to begin their around-the-world expedition. It wasn't their first attempt. An earlier try starting from California ended with a crash in Hawaii. This second attempt moved in the opposite direction, heading east instead of west. Their modified Lockheed Electra 10E was specially outfitted for the journey, with extra fuel tanks replacing passenger seats. By early July, they had completed nearly two-thirds of their journey, having flown from Miami through South America, across the Atlantic to Africa, and then across the Indian Ocean to Southeast Asia. On July 2, 1937, Earhart and Noonan took off from Lae, New Guinea, heading for tiny Howland Island, a flat strip of land just 1.5 miles long, situated in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. This leg was the most challenging of the entire trip, a 2,500-mile flight over open ocean to a minuscule target. To assist them, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca was stationed near Howland Island to provide radio guidance. From what we know through radio transmissions, something went terribly wrong. At 7:42 a.m. local time, Earhart radioed, "We must be on you, but cannot see you. Fuel is running low. Being unable to reach you by radio, we are flying at 1,000 feet." The ship's crew heard her signal, but couldn't establish two-way communication. Her final confirmed transmission came at 8:43 a.m. "We are on the line, 157-337. We'll repeat this message on 6210 kilocycles. Wait, listening on 6210 kilocycles. We are running north and south." Then, silence. The U.S. government launched what was then the most expensive sea and air search in history, covering 250,000 square miles of ocean. After 16 days, they declared Earhart and Noonan lost at sea. For decades, the trail went cold. The official conclusion was that Earhart ran out of fuel while searching for Howland Island, crashed into the Pacific Ocean, and the aircraft sank, leaving no trace. But the mystery didn't fade with time. If anything, it grew stronger. Over the next 8 decades, countless expeditions and researchers chased theories, spending millions of dollars searching across the Pacific. The earliest efforts focused on the waters around Howland Island, where Earhart was supposed to land. The U.S. Navy deployed aircraft carriers, battleships, and dozens of planes immediately after the disappearance, but they found nothing, not a single piece of wreckage. In the 1980s, the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, TIGHAR, began exploring an alternative theory, that Earhart and Noonan might have landed on Gardner Island, nearly 400 miles southeast of Howland Island. Led by Richard Gillespie, TIGHAR conducted 13 expeditions to Nikomaroro, uncovering tantalizing but ultimately inconclusive clues. Among the findings were a piece of aluminum aircraft skin, plexiglass similar to the Electra's windows, a woman's 1930s-style shoe, and even a jar that may have once contained freckle cream, an item Earhart was known to use. Another prominent theory came from aviator and investigator Elgen Long, who argued that Earhart had simply run out of fuel near Howland Island and crashed into the deep ocean. In his 1999 book, Amelia Earhart, The Mystery Solved, Long laid out a detailed case using fuel consumption rates and radio transmission data. The Waite Institute followed up with 2 deep-sea sonar searches in 2009, covering 2,000 square miles of ocean near Howland Island. In 2012, Robert Ballard, renowned for discovering the Titanic, joined the search using advanced underwater technology. But even his expedition came up empty-handed. Other theories wandered into more controversial territory. One proposed that Earhart and Noonan had been captured by Japanese forces after landing in the Marshall Islands. Another claimed they had secretly returned to America and lived under new identities. A 2017 History Channel documentary briefly reignited public interest by presenting a photograph that allegedly showed Earhart and Noonan in Japanese custody. However, that theory was quickly debunked when researchers discovered that the image had been published in a travel book 2 years before Earhart's final flight. Despite the influx of technology and fresh methodologies, every new expedition led to the same result: promising leads that ultimately proved inconclusive. The absence of hard physical evidence, no wreckage, no human remains, kept the mystery alive and fueled decades of speculation. As time passed, it seemed possible the mystery might never be solved. But among the many theories, one particularly compelling idea emerged in 2010, one that would later prove crucial to the major 2024 breakthrough. This theory, known as the dateline theory, was first proposed by Liz Smith, a former NASA employee and amateur pilot. She approached the case from a navigator's perspective, focusing on a simple human error that could have had devastating consequences: failing to account for crossing the international dateline during the flight. Navigators like Fred Noonan relied on celestial navigation, using sextants and measurements of the stars and sun to determine their position. These calculations depended on accurate timing and date information. The international date line complicates this, as crossing it from west to east means losing a day, while crossing from east to west means gaining one. Earhart and Noonan's flight from Lae, New Guinea to Howland Island crossed this invisible boundary, requiring an adjustment in their calculations. Smith theorized that after 17 hours of exhausting flight, Noonan may have simply forgotten to account for the date change. This oversight could have resulted in a westward navigational error of roughly 60 miles, placing them far outside the search zones of previous expeditions. What made this theory so compelling was its human element. Even a skilled navigator like Noonan could make such a mistake under intense pressure. Fatigue from a marathon flight, the enormous responsibility of guiding a small aircraft across the vast Pacific, and the stress of locating a minuscule island with limited fuel. The dateline theory didn't rely on far-fetched conspiracies or elaborate speculation. It accounted for human imperfection in an incredibly high-stakes situation. Most importantly, this theory pointed to a new search zone, an area about 100 miles west of Howland Island, at depths nearing 5,000 meters, that had never been properly explored. This overlooked location would eventually guide Tony Romeo and the Deep Sea Vision team to the discovery that may have finally cracked the case wide open. Nearly 87 years after Earhart's disappearance, a significant breakthrough came to light, offering a plausible explanation supported by physical evidence that previous theories couldn't provide. In January 2024, Deep Sea Vision, a marine robotics company based in Charleston, South Carolina, announced a discovery that sent shockwaves through both the aviation and archaeological communities. They had captured sonar images of what seemed to be an aircraft resting on the ocean floor, possibly Earhart's missing Lockheed 10E Electra. The operation was led by Tony Romeo, a former U.S. Air Force intelligence officer and CEO of Deep Sea Vision. Romeo wasn't just another researcher jumping into the mystery. He had assembled a 16-person team and invested heavily in the search, including purchasing a $9 million underwater drone tailored for the mission. "I've been fascinated by the Earhart mystery since I was a kid," Romeo said after the discovery. "But this wasn't about personal interest. We approached this scientifically, using the dateline theory to search areas that had never been thoroughly examined." The search area was vast, covering over 5,200 square miles of ocean floor west of Earhart's anticipated landing site. Using the advanced Hugin 6000 Autonomous Underwater Vehicle, AUV, the team conducted systematic scans of the seabed. The AUV, which could dive to depths of 5,000 meters under immense pressure, completed nearly 2-day-long missions, collecting terabytes of data. The breakthrough came when sonar images revealed an object about 100 meters from Howland Island, with a shape and dimensions matching Earhart's aircraft. Romeo was confident, stating, "You'd be hard-pressed to convince me this isn't an airplane, and not Amelia's plane." The discovery's location was particularly compelling, falling exactly where the dateline theory predicted the plane would have crashed. This theory suggested Earhart might have made a navigational mistake while crossing the international dateline, which would have led her to run out of fuel in that specific area. The sonar data suggested that the aircraft made a relatively controlled water landing, which matched what experts believed an experienced pilot like Earhart would have attempted in such a situation. The discovery drew immediate attention from major institutions. The Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum expressed interest, with aeronautics curator Dorothy Cochran saying, "We are intrigued by Deep Sea Vision's initial imagery, and it merits another expedition in the ongoing search for Amelia Earhart's aircraft near Howland Island." However, The team understood that sonar images alone couldn't provide definitive proof. The next step would involve closer inspection of the wreckage using cameras, and possibly recovering artifacts to conclusively identify the plane. The breakthrough in 2024 and the subsequent confirmation in 2025 were made possible by significant advancements in deep-sea exploration technology. The key to their success was the Huygens 6000, a cutting-edge autonomous underwater vehicle. This yellow, torpedo-shaped AUV weighed over 2 tons and could operate independently without tethers or continuous human control. Its synthetic aperture sonar offered 10 times the resolution of traditional systems, enabling the team to detect objects as small as a centimeter in size at depths of 6,000 meters. These advancements allowed deep-sea vision to cover much more ground than earlier search efforts. The Huygens 6000 could operate for up to 48 hours at a time, scanning 130 square miles of ocean floor, far more than older technology could cover in the same amount of time. The team also used artificial intelligence algorithms to help sort through the enormous amounts of sonar data and identify potential man-made objects amid natural formations. Over the course of 2024 and into early 2025, the team continued investigating the site with high-definition cameras, manipulator arms for artifact collection, and other specialized equipment to verify their findings. The precise navigation systems of the AUVs enabled them to maintain their position, even at depths of several kilometers, without relying on GPS signals and despite ocean currents. This technological revolution in deep-sea exploration has not only made solving the Earhart mystery possible, but is also transforming our ability to explore the deep ocean, one of the least understood areas on Earth. The initial sonar discovery in January 2024 was just the beginning of a rigorous verification process, as the team continued to investigate with scientific precision to ultimately resolve the mystery. The first challenge arose in November 2024 when follow-up sonar imaging initially hinted that the object might simply be a previously unknown rock formation. This temporary setback underscored the complexities of interpreting sonar data at extreme depths. However, after applying enhanced image processing techniques, the team confirmed distinct features characteristic of an aircraft, features that nature couldn't replicate. By December 2024, the team returned with more advanced equipment, including high-resolution cameras mounted on remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, capable of getting much closer to the ocean floor object. These visual inspections provided the first clear photographs of what lay nearly 16,000 feet below the surface. When the first images came through, there was total silence in the control room, recalled Sarah Chen, a marine archaeologist involved in the verification expedition. We were staring at what was unmistakably an aircraft with the twin-tail structure unique to the Lockheed Electra. The aluminum skin was corroded, but the airframe's shape was clear. These visuals revealed several unmistakable features matching Earhart's aircraft. The overall dimensions matched the Electra's 55-foot length and 38-foot wingspan. The landing gear configuration was accurate, and parts of the distinctive engine mounting system were still visible. In early 2025, a third expedition was launched to collect small samples and perform in-situ material analysis. Spectrographic testing confirmed the presence of aluminum alloys consistent with aircraft manufacturing in the 1930s. Even more compelling was the discovery of a partially legible serial number on a component that matched Earhart's Lockheed Electra. Perhaps the most persuasive piece of the puzzle was the wreck's location, exactly where it would have ended up had the dateline theory been correct, about 100 meters west of Howland Island. Modeling of weather, fuel consumption, and projected flight paths lined up perfectly with Earhart's final radio transmission, in which she reported flying along the 157/3 /37 line of position. We can now say, with more than 95% certainty, that we've found Amelia Earhart's Lockheed Electra, Tony Romeo announced at a February 2025 press conference, standing alongside representatives from the Smithsonian Institution and leading aviation historians. The combination of the wreck's location, design, scale, and unique features left little room for other explanations. While some of the wreck remains on the seafloor due to the difficulty of recovery at such depths, the photographic and analytical data have been enough to convince most experts that one of aviation's greatest mysteries has finally been solved, 88 years later. But even as deep-sea vision's discovery made headlines and gave weight to the crash-at-sea theory, another investigation was underway. Since January 2025, Dr. Richard Pettigrew, executive director of the Archaeological Legacy Institute in Eugene, Oregon, had been leading a separate expedition to Nikumaroro, formerly known as Gardner Island, a remote atoll roughly 400 miles southeast of Howland Island. The Nikumaroro hypothesis has long stood as a competing theory, proposing that after failing to find Howland, Earhart and navigator Fred Noonan may have had just enough fuel to reach this alternate island, where they might have survived as castaways before eventually perishing. Dr. Pettigrew's 10-person scientific team concentrated on an area they dubbed the Terra Object, a metallic and reflective anomaly on the island's northern shore spotted via satellite and drone footage, which some believed could be aircraft debris. Others have searched and come up empty, but eventually someone will get it right, Pettigrew said, acknowledging the string of past unsuccessful efforts. The summer 2025 expedition unearthed some compelling items: aluminum fragments consistent with 1930 aircraft materials, plexiglass matching the Electra's windows, and even personal items like a compact that may have once held freckle cream, a product Earhart was known to use. Most intriguing of all was a partial fingerprint preserved on a deteriorating leather item, currently being analyzed and compared to prints from Earhart's pilot license application. Preliminary results suggest a possible match, though final confirmation is still pending. While at first these findings seemed to challenge the deep ocean discovery, researchers soon proposed a unifying theory. Deep-sea vision had found the main fuselage and one wing section that crashed at sea, while lighter components, such as a tail section or a second wing, may have detached during the water landing and drifted on ocean currents to Nikumaroro, a known accumulation point for marine debris. We're no longer looking at competing ideas, but rather complementary pieces of a larger story, explained Dr. Pettigrew during a joint announcement with Tony Romeo in March 2025. The joint evidence from both sites, they argued, offers a fuller narrative of what likely happened in Earhart's final hours, a story that accommodates elements from once competing theories. With physical evidence now recovered from both the deep ocean and Nikumaroro, researchers in 2025 began assembling a coherent reconstruction of Earhart and Noonan's last moments. The timeline starts with Earhart's last verified radio transmission at 8:43 a.m., when she stated she was flying along the 157/337 line of position. According to modern fuel and navigation modeling, Earhart was approximately 100 miles west of her intended location, unknowingly off course due to a navigational error caused by crossing the international date line. By the time they realized the mistake, they probably didn't have the fuel left to course correct, said aviation historian Dr. Martin Jeff, who consulted on the project. Flight simulations using July 2, 1937 weather data suggest she had no more than 30 minutes of flight time remaining after the final transmission. Being a seasoned pilot, she would have likely started preparing for a water landing, while there was still fuel left to control the descent. The condition of the wreckage found by deep-sea vision supports this theory, showing a mostly intact airframe indicating a controlled landing rather than a crash. The wreckage pattern shows she landed parallel to the swells, which is standard emergency procedure, Romeo noted, referencing high-resolution site mapping. It was a textbook emergency landing under impossible circumstances. What followed the landing remains speculative, but is backed by physical clues. The prevailing theory suggests the aircraft stayed afloat for a period, perhaps hours, maybe even a day. During that time, strong currents began pulling the structure apart. Lighter parts, like a wing or tail section, may have broken away and drifted to Nikumaroro. Meanwhile, the heavier fuselage eventually sank to the seafloor. Whether Earhart and Noonan survived the landing is still unknown. Some researchers think they may have retrieved supplies and used the aircraft as a temporary raft, explaining the absence of certain personal items from the wreck. Others believe they may have died during or shortly after the landing. The question of why Amelia Earhart's disappearance has held such a powerful grip on the public imagination for nearly 90 years is worth examining. Her story goes beyond the bounds of aviation history. It became a cultural symbol reflecting shifting American ideals and attitudes throughout the 20th and early 21st centuries. Earhart vanished during a pivotal historical period, just before World War II, at a time when America's global influence was growing and traditional gender norms were beginning to be questioned. As one of the most well-known women in the world when she disappeared, Earhart symbolized a future that felt both exhilarating and unsettling to the status quo. Part of the enduring fascination with her case stems from the moment she disappeared, right at the peak of her fame, when radio could spread news rapidly around the globe, yet before television could deliver visuals in real time. It was the perfect storm for long-lasting intrigue, said Dr. Samantha Michaels, a cultural historian focused on 20th century America. This timing also aligned with rising tensions in the Pacific, which would soon escalate into World War II. Against this geopolitical backdrop, theories about Japanese involvement in her disappearance flourished. Despite a lack of concrete evidence, these ideas persisted well into the 21st century. Each generation has viewed Earhart's legacy through a different lens. In the 1940s and 50s, she was hailed as a patriotic figure who may have given her life in service to her country. The feminist movement of the 1970s embraced her as a trailblazer who defied gender norms. In more recent years, she's also been recognized by some as an LGBTQ+ icon, seen as a figure of independence who rejected conventional femininity, though this interpretation remains debated among historians. The mystery of her disappearance became a metaphor for humanity's complex relationship with technology. Both our awe at how machines extend human capability and our fears about the vulnerabilities they introduce. Earhart's vanishing came to represent both the triumph of modern ingenuity and the stark reminder of nature's overpowering scale. Unsolved mysteries like hers captivate us because they expose the limits of our understanding, even in an age of incredible technological progress. That's what made discovering Earhart's plane so meaningful, said Tony Romeo. It closes a chapter that's remained open across multiple generations. Solving the mystery doesn't reduce Earhart's impact. Instead, it brings closure to a narrative that has served as a mirror for evolving American values and anxieties through nearly a century of dramatic transformation.